All right, let's dive deep into the Iron Guard.
The Iron Guard.
Yeah, we're looking at their Nest Leader's Manual,
Oh yeah, fascinating stuff.
written by
By Codriano himself.
yeah, Cornelio Codriano. That's right.
The big guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a really I think it gives us a good picture of how they thought about the world.
Yeah, it's not like reading a, typical history book or anything like that.
Right.
This is straight from the horse's mouth. This is them telling us, or at least telling their members, how they viewed the world,
How to build a movement.
how to build a movement,
Yeah.
how to structure themselves, and how to think.
You're like so.
So let's start off with the structure,
Okay, sure.
because it's not a typical political party.
No, not at all.
What do we see here?
Well, they were very much into think of it like a pyramid.
Okay.
At the base, you have these small groups called nests,
Nests. Okay.
and each one, 5 to 15 people.
All right, so pretty small.
Pretty small, yeah, tight knit.
Okay.
And they have within the nest, they have their leader, the head.
Of course, yeah.
They have a correspondent, someone who writes and communicates with other nests.
So keeping records and stuff like that.
Exactly, keeping records. Yeah.
Okay.
Treasurer,
Of course, they're going to handle the money.
got to handle the money.
Yeah.
And then even a courier, someone who moves messages
Ah, okay. That's interesting.
and materials around.
Like a, what do they call them? Like a runner. Like
A runner. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So very much a structured kind of a system.
Yeah. So everyone has a very particular job.
Right.
And it's very, it's small, it's tight knit.
Yeah.
But obviously these nests don't exist in isolation, right?
Not at all.
They're part of a larger.
So you have multiple nests. I don't know, let's say 4 or 5 nests might form what they call a garrison.
Garrison.
And then multiple garrisons would form counties.
All right.
And then it all sort of reports up to the national organization
Uh-huh.
with Codriano at the top as the head.
So the top of the pyramid?
The top of the
Yeah.
pyramid.
Yeah.
It's all coming together,
Yeah, so it's interesting how they were very particular about this, having all these different levels and structures and
Yeah, very
But-
hierarchical. Yeah.
yeah, very much so.
I mean, you can see in the manual itself how they were really interested in this kind of well-oiled machine kind of approach.
That makes sense.
They were really thinking about, how to spread their message and their ideology.
So it was about efficiency,
I think so, yeah.
control, and growth.
Yeah, I think those are good terms for it.
Yeah, and I think another thing that kind of stood out to me was the reporting system.
Yep.
It was very specific about how each nest had to, report back to their superiors.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think that tells us about their mindset?
I think they were very, very concerned with making sure that everything was running the way it should be.
Okay. Yeah.
That there was a sort of ideological purity,
Yeah, that makes sense.
and also that they were actually measuring, how well they were doing.
So it wasn't just about following the rules. It was about
Right.
evaluating the success of each of these
Absolutely.
nests or
Yeah.
garrisons.
I mean, they had to report on, their activities, their finances,
Oh, wow.
the initiatives they were undertaking.
So everything was.
Everything was tracked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's very, very thorough.
Very thorough.
And when we look at their beliefs, I mean, we'll get into that more later,
Yes.
but even just from the way they structured themselves, you can see that nationalism and Christianity are like very central to their whole worldview.
Absolutely.
What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, Codriano talks a lot about this spiritual renewal of the Romanian people.
Okay.
And he very much sees these two things, nationalism and Christianity,
Yeah.
as being, like intertwined.
Yeah. Inseparable, almost.
Yeah, inseparable.
Yeah.
It wasn't enough to just be, Romanian. It wasn't enough to just be Christian. You had to be both.
Both. Yeah. And intensely so.
And intensely so. Yeah, it was a very powerful kind of belief system,
Yeah. And it wasn't just, a passive belief system either.
No, no.
Like they really emphasized, action, discipline,
Absolutely.
obedience, hard work, sacrifice.
Oh yeah, they were preparing for a fight.
It's like they were preparing for some kind
A
of
spiritual
spiritual war. Yeah.
Yeah.
They really saw themselves as warriors in a sense,
We did.
fighting for their version of Romania.
For the soul of Romania.
For the soul of Romania,
Wow.
yeah.
I mean, and they demanded absolute dedication to Codriano,
To the leader.
to the movement.
To the movement.
So it was very intense.
Yeah, very intense and very much about molding people into a certain mold, you know?
Yeah, into soldiers for their cause.
Yeah, into soldiers for their cause. And, you know, they talked a lot about moral conduct,
Maybe
like honesty, dignity, sobriety. But then, you know, you also see these very troubling elements in the manual.
Oh, sure.
Like, for instance, their anti-Semitism is...
Yeah, it's very blatant.
It's very blatant and very disturbing.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, they saw the Jewish population as a threat to the very fabric of Romania.
Yeah. And it's hard to grapple with that, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's such a dark and harmful ideology.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's there, and it's central to their whole worldview. It's part of their their vision for what they wanted Romania to be.
Yeah, so it wasn't just about spiritual renewal. It was about a complete societal overhaul. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they wanted to reshape Romania.
They had this vision of, the new man and the new Romania.
Right. And how did that vision manifest itself?
Well, they wanted to transform Romanian society from the ground up.
Yeah.
They wanted to get rid of what they saw as impurities.
Okay.
Whether that was political corruption, Jewish influence, communist ideals.
So they were trying to purify it according to their vision.
Yes. They wanted to rebuild Romania according to their kind of ultra-nationalist Christian worldview.
Yeah, so very rigid, very specific.
Very rigid, yeah.
And the new man, it wasn't just about ideology, it was about behavior, appearance, even how they
handled money.
Yeah.
It was a whole way of life.
So it was a very it's almost like they were trying to create this parallel society.
A model society
within Romania.
A model for how they thought the world should be.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's fascinating to see how they envisioned that, but also kind of frightening, because it's so exclusionary.
Yeah.
And so rigid.
It's very much a black and white kind of worldview.
Black and white, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
There's good and bad and
in between.
And no in between. And we are the good guys.
We are the good guys.
And everyone else is the bad guys.
Yeah, and that's a dangerous way of looking at the world.
It is.
But it's clear that that's how they.
Yeah, that was their worldview.
That was their worldview.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were very committed to it, and we see that in how they structured themselves, how they recruited people, how they how they operated. So it's a fascinating but also kind of disturbing glimpse into their
minds.
Yeah, and into their methods.
Into their methods, yeah.
It's interesting how they managed to combine this intense focus on personal morality with these extremist views. It's like they created this twisted moral code where being a good person was somehow synonymous with being a fervent nationalist and an anti-Semite.
Well, I think that's a key point, right? They weren't just thugs. They were selling an entire worldview.
Right, a whole way of life.
A way of life.
Yeah, and to them, purifying Romania meant aligning it with this idealized version of Christianity.
Right, one that was very much exclusionary. This wasn't just about hating Jews. This was about creating a society where their version of faith was the only acceptable path.
Yeah, and that makes their participation in elections even more interesting because they weren't just another political party.
No, they weren't.
So what set them apart on the campaign trail? What do they do differently?
Well, they rejected the usual playbook.
Okay.
So instead of, promising material benefits, which they saw as corrupt and materialistic, they offered something else.
What was that?
They offered a vision of moral renewal.
Okay.
A chance to be part of building this new Romania.
So it wasn't about winning votes through handouts or empty promises.
It was about appealing to something something deeper.
Deeper.
A desire for meaning and purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. Like a spiritual kind of awakening almost.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And speaking of appealing to people, they had a very specific strategy.
They did.
For recruitment, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't just about numbers. It was about finding the right kind of people.
It was about quality over quantity.
Okay.
They wanted people who embodied their values.
So what kind of values are we talking about here?
So honesty, dignity, courage.
Okay, so real emphasis on character.
On character, yeah. They even had exclusion criteria.
Oh, really? What do you mean by that?
So they would reject people who they deemed dishonest or cowardly or prone to scandal.
So it's almost like a very
selective club.
Selective club, yeah.
But with the aim of reshaping an entire nation.
Yeah, that's ambitious.
It is, yeah.
And they also limited the number of members from each village.
Yeah.
Which seems counterintuitive.
Does.
If your goal is to gain widespread support.
Yeah.
So why do you think they did that?
I think it was all about control and unity.
Okay.
They didn't want to create divisions.
Within communities.
They wanted to establish themselves as this kind of united force within each village.
So like a small but powerful presence in each community.
Yeah, and it allowed them to project this image of strength and solidarity.
Okay.
They wanted to be seen as the true representatives of the people.
Yeah, so it's almost like they were building this parallel society, operating by their own rules with their own moral code.
Very much so.
Yeah, and how did they bridge the gap between this internal world and their broader political ambitions?
Well, they weren't afraid to get their hands dirty.
Okay.
They would engage in community work, as we've discussed.
Yeah.
But they also employed more aggressive tactics.
Like what?
So they would disrupt elections. They would intimidate opponents.
Wow.
They even resorted to violence.
So they were willing to use...
when it suited their purposes.
Yeah. Any means necessary.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
To achieve their goals.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a mix of...
idealism and ruthlessness.
Yeah,
they believed in their cause, but they were also willing to do whatever it took to achieve it.
Yeah, and that's a dangerous combination.
It is, yeah.
But they weren't just about brute force, though.
No, not at all.
I mean, their use of propaganda and symbolism is particularly interesting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they understood the power of imagery and emotional appeals.
Yeah.
Their uniforms, their flags, their slogans.
It was all very carefully crafted.
Definitely crafted, yeah.
Yeah.
To project this image of strength and unity and moral righteousness.
So it was about creating a certain feeling.
Yeah, a feeling of belonging, a shared purpose.
Yeah, like a sense of identity almost.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier that their Saturday night meetings were more than just political gatherings.
Right.
They had rituals, they had oaths, they even had self-improvement.
Yeah, it was all part of reinforcing their ideology.
Okay.
And creating this very powerful sense of community.
Yeah, and why were these meetings so central to their movement? What was the purpose of all this?
Well, I think of them as carefully orchestrated performances.
Okay.
Designed to evoke a very specific emotional response.
Like what kind of response?
A sense of awe, of reverence, of belonging to this chosen group.
Okay, so it's about creating a feeling.
Yeah, it's about creating a feeling.
Yeah.
And within this, carefully constructed environment,
they
could more effectively instill their ideology and inspire action.
Yeah, so it's about manipulation in a sense.
I think it's a fair word.
Yeah, it's about using these techniques to control people's emotions.
And to control their behavior.
Yeah. And they had these specific rituals, like the greeting. I swear that I will never betray the Legion.
It's an oath of allegiance.
It's like a cult-like
it is, yeah.
oath of allegiance.
It's very much like that.
Yeah, and they even had rewards for their members.
He did, yeah.
Like these little tricolor flags with stars earned for participation in these battles?
Yeah, the battles weren't always literal.
Okay.
I mean, they certainly engaged in violence sometimes.
Right.
But they could also be, things like successfully recruiting new members or carrying out, these community initiatives that we talked about earlier.
So anything that furthered their goals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whatever those goals might be at the time.
Yeah, so they had this whole internal system of rewards and recognition.
Yeah, it was very effective.
Yeah, and it's clear that this manual, it gives us this unique glimpse into the inner workings of the Iron Guard.
Yep.
It's like peeling back the layers of this complex and disturbing puzzle.
Yeah, and what's so remarkable is how it reveals not only their beliefs, but also their strategies for achieving their goals.
Yeah, how to actually put those beliefs
into practice. Yeah.
Yeah, and we see that, in their organizational structure, in their recruitment methods, in their use of propaganda.
Yeah.
It all points to a movement that was both deeply ideological, but also incredibly strategic.
Very strategic.
Yeah.
Very much so.
In its approach.
Yeah.
It's hard to wrap my head around how they managed to package such a hateful ideology in this language of, spirituality and national renewal.
Yeah.
It's like they were twisted.
They were masters of that.
Yeah.
I mean, they were very good at kind of,
exploiting
existing cultural and religious narratives. And tapping into this deep-seated longing that a lot of people have for a return to a mythical past,
like a simpler time.
Yeah, when Romania was supposedly pure and strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just appealing to the fringes of society.
No.
Right. Their message resonated with
a lot of people.
Yeah, like a surprisingly broad segment of the population.
Yeah.
So what do you think made them so effective at capturing hearts and minds?
Well, I think they were very good at tapping into legitimate grievances.
Okay.
I mean, Romania in the 1930s was facing real problems.
Right. There was
economic hardship, political corruption, social unrest,
So things were not good.
Things were not good. And the Iron Guard offered, simple, albeit dangerous solutions.
So they were giving people scapegoats, yeah.
They demonized their opponents.
Uh-huh.
They promised to restore order.
And national pride.
Yeah,
so it's a classic tactic, isn't it? Exploiting
fear
and uncertainty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tale as old as time.
Yeah, but their appeal went beyond just
I don't think so.
Fear-mongering, right.
Right.
They also offered this sense of
community,
of belonging to something greater than oneself.
Right. I mean, they understood the human need for connection, for purpose, for a sense of identity.
Yeah, they gave people something to believe in. Something to fight for.
Yeah, and they created this very tightly knit community.
Right.
Bound by shared beliefs and rituals.
So it was a real sense of
belonging.
Yeah, and a lot of people,
especially young people.
Yeah, I was gonna say, especially young people are drawn to that, and they weren't content with just building a community.
No, they had a plan.
They wanted to
reshape the entire nation.
Yeah, their vision of a new Romania was both
ambitious and terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, their goal wasn't just to gain political power. It was to fundamentally transform
society.
Romanian society.
Yeah, according to their ideology.
Yeah. And they wanted to create this nation that was purified of what they perceived as impurities.
Jewish influence, communist ideals, anything that didn't fit their definition
of Romanian identity. Yeah, it was a very, very narrow and specific definition. And that brings us back to this manual, right?
Yeah.
Because it's more than just...
It's a blueprint.
A collection of rules and regulations.
So building a totalitarian society.
Yeah.
I mean, it really lays out in very chilling detail.
Yeah.
Their strategy.
How to control everything.
How to recruit, how to indoctrinate, how to mobilize, how to control.
Yeah. And it's a testament to their
meticulous planning. And their unwavering belief.
And their belief.
And their cause.
Yeah. They really believed in what they were doing.
They did.
No matter how misguided it was.
Yeah.
And one thing that I keep coming back to is their emphasis on action.
Right.
It wasn't just about talking.
They were all about action.
Or theorizing. It was about
putting their beliefs into practice.
Putting those beliefs into practice, yeah. Whatever the cost.
No matter the cost.
And they organized rallies, they engaged in community work, and they resorted to violence.
When it suited their purpose. I wanted to show that they were the ones who could get things done, even if it meant breaking the law or harming others.
So they really took that idea of action to
an extreme.
To an extreme, yeah. And this manual
served as a guide
with its detailed instructions and passionate rhetoric.
It was their inspiration.
It served as a guide for their actions.
Yeah, it was a source of inspiration for them.
Yeah, and justification for their behavior.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a chilling reminder that words have power.
Words have power.
Yeah, ideology can be weaponized.
Yeah.
And that even seemingly noble goals can be twisted to serve dark purposes.
Yeah, that's a powerful thought.
It is.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Iron Guard, what are the key takeaways? What can we learn from their story?
Well, I think
that might help.
The most important lesson:
understand and confront the challenges we face today.
Is that we can't be complacent about the threat of extremism.
Right. Yeah.
No matter where it arises.
No matter where it comes from.
Or what form it takes.
Yeah.
The Iron Guard may be a historical example, right? But their tactics, their rhetoric, their ability to exploit fear and grievance are all too relevant.
They're still around today.
In the world today.
Yeah, and they remind us that these extremist movements often thrive in times of uncertainty and social upheaval.
Yeah, when people are looking for...
When people are afraid. They're looking for answers.
Easy answers.
Yeah, and they're easy prey for these kinds of...
For these kinds of movements.
Movements, that offer these simple solutions for complex problems.
Yeah, and they prey on people's desire.
Yeah.
For belonging.
For belonging and purpose. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that really stands out to me about the Iron Guard is that they
understood that.
They understood that.
Yeah.
That people need that.
Yeah, they were very good at exploiting that.
Yeah, they were very good at giving people that sense of purpose, of belonging, of
being part of something.
Of being part of something.
Bigger than themselves.
Bigger than themselves, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful thing.
It is.
And it's something that we need to be aware of. And we need to be careful.
Yeah, we need to be vigilant.
Yeah, about how those desires, those needs can be exploited.
They can be twisted
by these kinds of movements.
Yeah, to serve their own purposes.
Yeah, and I think the Iron Guard.
They also remind us.
Maybe gone.
That we have to defend.
But their story.
Democratic values.
Is a warning.
And promote critical thinking.
A warning to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that these things can happen.
Mm-hmm. And foster empathy.
Anywhere.
Understanding across difference.
Yeah, and that's something that we need to keep in mind as we move forward.
The best antidote to extremism is a society that is resilient. Informed. And committed to justice.
And justice.
And equality.
Yeah. So it's not just about, fighting against these extremist groups. Mm-hmm. It's about building a better world.
It's about building a better world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where these kinds of ideologies have no place.
Yeah.
And that's a hopeful thought.
It is.
Yeah, but it's also a lot of work.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's work worth doing.
It's work worth doing. And I think this deep dive into the Iron Guard's manual has been a
journey into the dark heart.
Of
extremism.
Yeah. It's been a tough
It's been a tough one.
Yeah. But it's also been a reminder that we have
the tools
and the knowledge to resist this kind of
allure
of
extremism.
Yeah, and it's up to us to use them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's up to all of us.
To be better.
To be better.
To do better.
To do better.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a a fascinating and thought-provoking.
It has.
Deep dive.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise.
And thanks to all of you for listening.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.